Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball rocks. Dragon Ball Z and DBGT. Super and heroes and movies galore. TV specials and so much more.
Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball rocks. From Dragon Ball fans to Dragon Ball stands. Rating, debating, we're making a list. Soon they'll all be pissed. What the fuck? Hey, cut the music. Cut the music. Lanny, where's our third person?
I thought you were in charge of picking them.
No, this is not a Scotocracy.
Yeah, I'm gonna need a third person because I can't take your terrible portmanteaus all by myself. Kieran, help!
Hey, is it that time of the year again?
Yep, it's DBcember.
But it's not just any DBcember. It's the last DBcember.
Yeah, after 7 years of Dragon Ball related countdowns, we feel like this yearly celebration has run its course.
And we feel there's no better way to wrap up this tradition than by giving our top 12 Dragon Ball sagas.
Oh, yes. So that obviously means the list will include Dragon Ball, Z, GT, and Super, right?
3 of those, yeah.
Wow, I can't believe Super didn't make the list. Oh, okay. No, yeah, I get it. Well, you guys have fun with that, because I'm gonna go visit my family in Florida for the holidays. Merry Christmas, f***ers! Kieran out!
He chose GT over us.
He chose Florida over us.
Well, that's fine. We've got other options.
Right. Hey, Grant, what are you doing?
Oh, hey, Lanny. Hey, Kaiser. I was just finishing up my 100% run of the new Tails game.
Well, stop with that anime bullshit, because we need to talk about anime bullshit.
It's DBcember time, but Kira decided to Dragon Ball GTFO, so we call upon your aid once more.
Hey, Lanny.
Yeah?
Remember when you jokingly blamed episode 60 being delayed on me?
Yeah?
And how I was told "f*** you, Grant" by the fan base for nearly a year?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And unlike you nerds, I've had my fill of anime bullshit with all those My Hero reviews. Good luck with the countdown, though.
Oh, shit. No Grant, no Kieran.
And that means the only one left is...
Sorry, can't do it.
Fucking
Why?
I'm too busy. Ever since I became a VTuber, my schedule's been packed. Also, trying to record those scripts is a nightmare.
Yeah, they can be impenetrable walls of convoluted text.
They're nuanced and descriptive.
You write like anime sounds!
But yeah, sorry guys, I can't help this year. But if you want, I can be in the intro video.
Well, I guess it could just be the two of us.
Nick, we need a third person so we don't get stuck in a dragmire.
And that's,
A quagmire, but specifically related to Dragon Ball discussion.
Kaiser, it's totally not funny, dude.
Wait a second. Totally not funny. Totally not. I've got it!
A better understanding of comedy?
Nope! A third person for this year's DBcember. A special guest star.
Oh. Oh, yeah! I can see it! But will he do it?
Well, there's only one way to find out. Hey! Totally not Mark!
Oh, hey, hi guys. Why are you shouting?
'Cause you're all the way across the pond, lad.
Don't.
Mark, we need you to be our third for this year's DBcember. It's the finale, and we're going over our top 12 Dragon Ball sagas.
Wow, that's kinda perfect. I actually only recently reread the first several arcs of Dragon Ball from Pilaf to Piccolo Jr. and reviewed them over on my channel, Totally Not Mark. And besides being the perfect setup for a plug, they've got me primed and ready for this.
Sweet. Good to have you on board, bro.
But before we start the final countdown, we'll have to lay down some ground rules. 1. A saga, in this regard, means a collection of smaller arcs that tell a larger story. I.e., the Namek arc, Ginyu arc, and Frieza arc will be combined into the Namek saga. Same with the Android arc and the Cell arc, making the Android saga. And the half a dozen mini-arcs that ultimately make up the Buu saga.
2. There are countless factors that are considered while reviewing an overall story, including but not limited to its pacing, narrative structure, its themes and consistency in using those themes, its effective use of drama, and so on. We'll try our best to provide an effective breakdown on how these sagas work and don't work, in our opinion.
and 3. We won't be including Heroes, the Super Manga, or any of the movies or specials. So expect only the original Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, and the Super Anime.
About GT.
Ooh, you didn't.
All right, folks, now that we have the rules out of the way, deck your halls and grab some balls, because it's time to get this countdown started!
Kieran's gotta be pissed.
Yeah, funny that.
12.
You know, maybe last year should have been the last DBcember.
Is it too late to back out now?
We had this discussion. It went up to a vote. Now, I know this is going to be a point of controversy. When it comes to the available sagas in the Dragon Ball canon, one of them had to make the bottom of this list. There was a long, exhausting, dare I say bloody conversation about whether or not it should be a saga from GT or Goku Black.
I suggested the Shadow Dragon saga from GT for being such a brilliant concept, if done poorly, with what is debatably the best ending in all of Dragon Ball.
And I was leaning a little more towards the Baby Saga for being the only saga in GT that didn't make me want to pull an eternal sunshine of the spotless mind to forget the agony. But I can't lie. GT not making this list is a bittersweet victory. Emphasis on the bitter.
The ending of the Goku Black saga is a mind-bogglingly depressing, gallingly nihilistic finale to an otherwise roller coaster of a story. While there are many, many hiccups leading into the last 2 episodes, it really felt like they were pulling out all the stops to give us a satisfactory, bombastic finish.
Only for them to follow up that amazing climax with Rocks Drop, Everyone Dies on the entire universe, proving their actions were essentially all for naught, dooming an entire timeline to a permanent state of null. And the light at the end of the tunnel for Trunks and Mai is immensely awkward, essentially having to live alongside their alternate versions of themselves in another timeline.
And of course, the saga has a ton of other issues. Goku forgetting both the Senzu and the talisman for the Mafaba, them having to return to the future not twice but 3 whole times, Trunks learning the Mafaba via Piccolo's YouTube tutorial video. It's a flawed, frustrating saga that admittedly dropped the ball in a big way, and not just once.
So why, Kaiser? Why?
Because, damn it, when it first started airing, it shocked the fandom. When it was revealed that our main antagonist was going to be an evil version of Goku, folks thought it was going to be the biggest shark jump of the franchise. But the first episode of the saga proper is one of the most effective and gripping in all of Dragon Ball.
Scott's got a point about that first episode. The darker, apocalyptic tone mashed up with some amazing art direction and stellar animation, supported by some of the best music in Super at that point, makes Black's introduction something special. In terms of setting up an intimidating villain, this saga is hard to beat, and the following episode sets up a huge arc-long mystery.
And it was exceptionally cool to see them try and tie in old characters and concepts, like the second time machine Cell used, the Mafaba, and the concept of gods in the Kaioshin. And while I feel they mishandled the descent into madness on the behalf of Zamasu, that character was a fresh, new archetype for the series, with a twisted moral complexity that was missing from previous villains.
It is also shocking that Goku Black as a character is largely effective. You'd think evil Goku would be boring and cliche, but it's undeniable that the performance from Masuko Nozawa actually enhances this character with her soft, cold, calculated speech.
Honestly, by the virtue of being sub-only for so long, Super introduced Nozawa to a huge amount of dub-only fans who'd undervalued her performance for years.
And the art direction makes a point to emphasize Black's twisted nature, all the way down to his black and red gi. Those toothy grins, narrowed eyes, and pompous poses give him a real presence that elevates him from a bad concept done well to a sincerely memorable villain with a lot of gravity.
Too bad the story decides to fuse him into a more boring version of both of them. Though Merge Zamasu does have some brilliant moments visually, his character effectively loses everything that made him interesting, complex, and intimidating, turning him into just another pompous villain for Goku and the gang to put down.
But guys, many of the fights in this saga are awesome. Some of the best saga in Dragon Ball up until that point happened in this saga. And this is seen all the way up until the climax, where Trunks whips out his plot sword and vertically bisects merged Zamasu. There was so much hype, I remember cheering with friends while watching it.
And then what, Kaiser?
You know what, Lanny. We all do.
Are we also going to ignore how it introduces a second Omni King because one wasn't enough?
And also the weird love triangle stuff with Mai, Trunks, and... Trunks?
Listen, I know it's got its low points, but its highs are astronomical. For every moment where we groaned and sighed, there was another we cheered and lost our collective shit over. It's a mixed bag, no doubt about it, but I truly think it earns its spot at number 12 by introducing a complex antagonist, tackling some dark existential themes, making Goku Black an incredibly effective villain, and providing some of the best action Dragon Ball has seen up until that point.
Fair enough. Still think the Shadow Dragons were way cooler.
The Trunks and my stuff was a little weird though, right?
A little?
11.
And speaking of my...
Guys, what's with all the people holding pitchforks and burning torches?
Oh, that's just the OG Dragon Ball fans furious that Pilaf made it this low on the countdown.
This cannot be a surprise.
Okay, Kaiser, go ahead. Be that fan.
I assure you I don't understand the connotation. The Pilaf Saga, or Hunt for the Dragon Ball Saga, is a fucking gem, and is the closest thing Dragon Ball has to a flawless arc on this entire list. Hot off Toriyama's highly successful run of Dr. Slump, this is where it all began, with a story full of comedy, perverted antics, mystical adventure, and more comedy. Featuring a classic, colorful cast of characters, each chapter and episode is packed with charm and laughter. With each new character that we meet and bigger hurdle that Goku overcomes, we're further enchanted and engrossed into this world, until the wild climax that ties everything together with the funniest ending in the franchise.
There's really a charm in its simplicity, isn't there? Spanning only 23 chapters of the manga and 13 episodes of the anime, this is a comparably light read, all things considered, but it delivers heaps of jokes, fan service, and a delightfully straightforward story. The ending with the reveal of Goku's backstory involving Grandpa Gohan is still an emotional gut punch.
Obviously, while this saga is near the bottom, it's certainly not because it does anything more wrong than the sagas above it. In fact, I'd be inclined to agree, this saga is generally harmless. But in that simplicity, it also doesn't quite reach the same highs as the other sagas aspire to. That just isn't what Toriyama was pursuing. He wanted something more in the vein of Dr. Slump meets Journey to the West, and by God, he nailed it! But the lack of ambition in the story also keeps it lower on this list.
Shout out to the Pilaf gang for somehow managing to maintain a presence in the series all the way to Super, even if the road there was full of questionable methods and even more questionable ships.
It's also worth noting that the length of this saga doesn't do it many favors. It's one of the shortest on this list without any prior setup, meaning that a lot of its time is spent establishing characters, concepts, locations, etc. But that's also arguably to its benefit, keeping it short, briskly paced, with plenty of jokes per minute.
Pilaf is low on our list, but this is the place where it all started, where the concept of Dragon Balls were introduced, where Bulma met Goku and shot him in the fucking head, where a transforming pig stole child wives, and Yamcha and Puar tried to mug them in the desert, where a goblin boy, accompanied by an adult woman and a talking dog, tried to conquer the world, only to be thwarted by a 12-year-old hick, where Goku would make a fateful lunch date with a silly lovesick girl who would one day become his wife, where we first saw the Kamehameha, which kids would make a pastime mimicking in their backyards for decades to come, where the magic began, almost 30 years ago, that still, miraculously, continues to this day. Sure, it's unambitious, but it's also
Heartfelt.
Endearing.
inspired.
This saga may not reflect what the series as a whole has to offer, but it's a perfectly paced, simple, enchanting story about a little monkey boy taking off a teenage girl's panties before she flashes a lecherous man old enough to be her grandfather. And that's a story we can all relate to.
Real glad Goku learned to tell the difference between boys and girls before he was old enough for that to become a much more serious issue.
Now I'm imagining adult Goku giving the old pat-pat to Vegeta when he first showed up.
Or Beerus.
You know he stared at Whis long enough to consider it.
10.
Y'all ever think credibility is overrated?
Kaiser, people don't tune into us for our credibility. They tune into us for our honesty.
And honestly, I'm surprised that this made it above Pilaf, considering that this saga may have some of the lowest lows in all of Dragon Ball Super.
I mean, nothing can compete with the Resurrection F saga. It's astounding that the series managed to recover from what should have been, for all intents and purposes, a mortal wound.
If I may, the Universe Survival Saga, often referred to as the Tournament of Power Saga, honestly contains a couple of my favorite moments from Dragon Ball in it. From the very beginning, we're treated to one of the best opening themes Dragon Ball has to offer,
Following up the worst opening theme song in Dragon Ball, Don't Shift Plus to Me.
which honestly got me back into the gym. It's such a banger. And then there's the exhibition and recruitment arcs, which are included in this entry. Almost everyone's recruitment came with a moment from them to not only show off their skills, but also a character moment with Goku, aided by a couple of honestly amazing fights. And don't even get me started on Frieza. While the fandom's initial response to the replacement of Buu was rightfully exasperated and annoyed, Frieza subbing in may have been one of the best choices they could have made, both for the tournament and for the character. One of Frieza's most important attributes is his sadism. He's not just ruthless, he takes pleasure in the act of torturing and killing his opponents. And though we get to see a little bit of that in the Resurrection F arc, there's something about the way he's depicted here that sells his demented attitude so much more. His stunning transformation into Golden Frieza, his dismantling of the Universe 4 assassins, and the subsequent match afterwards are all amazing and perfectly set up the dynamic between Frieza and Universe 7 for the Tournament of Power.
I remember the backlash over Buu being benched. The base went ballistic. But now, well, we can't imagine a TOP without Frieza.
I also want to add, when Goku is shadow sparring on Uranai Baba's ring, he's actually recreating his fight, move for move, against his grandpa back during the Red Ribbon Army saga, which, as far as Easter eggs go, is pretty fucking phenomenal.
And then the actual tournament is full of hype moments. While it takes a fine bit for the fights to really warm up, the first time we see Goku tap into Ultra Instinct will forever stick in the minds of every Dragon Ball fan, especially when that music hits, just boom! You also have huge, heartfelt callbacks and tributes to Dragon Ball throughout, one of the best finishing moves in the franchise against Kefla, and one of the biggest climactic battles in all of anime with Frieza, 17, and Goku versus Jiren.
The Tournament of Power is one giant love letter to all of Dragon Ball. It spends so much of its time reminding us of everything that came before it, all the while bombarding us with a cavalcade of battles, new characters, and conflicts, being supported by an army of both veteran animators and fantastic newbies, all giving it their 100% to deliver a standout climactic finish to a heavily flawed series.
Y'all really gonna make me do it, huh? I have to be the heel.
But watching this season week to week was a trial, and not in the "oh my god, I can't wait to see what happens next week, the suspense is killing me" kind of way, but more the "what the hell was that? That's how they took out Ten Shinhan? What do you mean it's only been 10 minutes in the tournament? It's been like 5 episodes. That's how they took out Piccolo? Jesus, the color palette on these backgrounds is ugly as sin. This boring pile of roided up Area 51 paraphernalia is our main antagonist? Sort of way. It was a slog for longtime fans like myself.
And while a narratively relevant callback or reference can help elevate a scene, I have to put my foot down over them breaking out Vegeta's sacrifice against Buu, only for it to not actually cost him his life. The entire point of that moment was that he was using all of his energy and giving his life in order to win. Without that element, it's literally just the same technique Piccolo used against Goku in the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai. No emotional weight, no sacrifice, just a cheap, insipid ploy on the behalf of the writers that left me more pissed than pumped.
Let's not forget the use of Kachi Kachin, the hardest, most durable material in the universe, as the material for the ring, only for it to immediately break and shatter like any other material, effectively making it pointless and actually underselling the character's abilities. And don't even get us started on the pacing. We should have known 48 minutes was a ludicrous number, but to have approximately 34 episodes take place in one location over less than an hour? It's like they looked at Frieza's 5 minutes and said, "hold my heat tap." And this wouldn't be such a chore either if the environments felt varied or visually pleasing to look at, but like I said before, the Tournament of Power's stage and environment is often intensely ugly, to the point where the change in color to the sky was initially welcomed, until you realize that the color actually got worse.
And like Mark said before, some of the eliminations in that tournament were downright disappointing. Ten Shinhan's whole bullshit sacrifice is made all that much worse by his 2 appearances in the recruitment arc being absolute character assassination, and Piccolo is taken out by a character that he should literally be the best equipped for. And beyond that, while I love the Universe 6 Saiyans, their ascent in terms of power is so steep and unearned that it really makes you question why the hell Goku took as long as he did. In a story about the struggle to grow and improve, watching these 3 effortlessly unlock huge, once character-defining transformations feels like a spin in the face of the story and its themes thus far. And there are plenty of controversial writing choices throughout, between Blue Evolution, the time dilation regarding Goku's stamina recovery, a questionable amount of focus on Ribrianne, one of the worst Roshi scenes of all time, the no flying rule being defied weekly, and if you're not a fan of the Omni King, well, good news! There's 2 of them now, and they will not shut the f up.
And while those good animation days were much more common in this saga, the bad animation days made already lackluster fights that much worse, coupled with a mixed bag of new characters that range from legitimately compelling to downright forgettable to please God stop showing up. I sometimes would find myself rooting for other universes to lose members faster just to get off this crazy carnival ride as fast as possible.
And then there's Kill/Broly.
Don't get me started. And what about Jiren?
What about Jiren?
Which I can only imagine is exactly what the writer said.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, I value your input, I've processed your opinions, and I agree. None of what you guys said is wrong, but I posit this. Though it may be true that there are issues all throughout this saga, isn't it amazing that they all still managed to accomplish so many show-stopping moments throughout? We never even talked about just how much of a boss Android 17 gets to be, the emotional highlight of Master Roshi nearly giving his life, the descent of Top into godhood, or all the crazy variety of fighting styles. Hell, Kaiser, you madman, you even argued for Android 18 versus Ribrianne to be in the top fights list.
Well, duh, that climax is fire.
And Mark, I know the themes of trust that played heavily into the finale were a huge part of that saga for you.
It is definitely the highlight of the story, little as there was.
The Tournament of Power may be the farthest you could get from a perfect saga, but its introduction of Ultra Instinct, themes of trust, spectacular battles, insanely good music, and some of the best climaxes in the franchise absolutely earned it a high spot in my personal top 5.
Well, hey, I'm here to review, not yuck people's yums. So I'm glad it means so much to you, man. And I can totally understand your argument.
And I yours.
Ah, look at you, acting all civil for the people at home.
Nah, if you really want to set him off, start a conversation about Nozawa as Goku.
You mean about how she's a phenomenal actress who earned the role and y'all need to back the fuck?
9.
Hey, Lanny, did you know that a more proper spelling of boo would be with 2 O's?
Really? Because of the whole bibbidi bobbidi boo reference?
Yep, but they went with the Japanese Romaji spelling because they probably didn't want to risk Disney giving them a hard time.
They probably also wanted to make Boo more easily searchable online, and also not sound like a ghost from Super Mario Bros.
Now that we've got our hashtag dragon facts out of the way, the Boo saga is weird.
Frustrating.
A bit of a mess.
It's a saga chock full of memorable moments, but equally chock full of dubious decisions and disheartening disappointments. The final saga of the original manga is the longest in terms of chapters, second longest in terms of overall pages, and maybe the most vexing on the list.
I've talked at length about the shortcomings of the Boo saga in my video Majin Buu: The Mishandled Mess. In that video, I mentioned that a community poll ranked this saga as the worst of Dragon Ball Z. And though that doesn't have anything to do with how we ranked this saga here, the consensus is telling.
People generally recognize the issues with Boo. It has trouble getting started, it's overly long, so much of it does not progress the plot, its main antagonist is memorable but inconsistent, and it mishandles some major characters.
It takes the story approximately 40% of its overall length just to establish its key players and major conflict. And throughout that conflict, the story introduces Fusion, Super Saiyan 3, and Ultimate Gohan, but instead of serving the narrative, there are flourishes that bloat it, slowing the actual progress of the story down.
And that's not to speak of what it does to Gohan's role in the narrative. At the end of the Cell games, we see the torch passed from Goku to Gohan in one of the most thrilling climaxes in all of Dragon Ball. And Goku makes the choice to leave the role of Earth's protector to him, and arguably the role of the main character. It's a huge moment, and while some might argue that the journey there was flawed, the outcome was decisive.
But once Boo rears his pink-ass head, Toriyama seemingly reneges on this decision. And let me make this abundantly clear. This isn't about us wanting Gohan to specifically remain a fighter and to slavishly dedicate himself to training in combat like his father did. Honestly, I love the idea of him just being a family man and doing the same man stuff on the weekends. It's cute, it's fun, and it fits the character.
But so much time is spent building up Gohan as the main character, even going several chapters without Goku at all in the Saiyaman arc, only for him to be firmly pushed back into the supporting role the moment Goku arrives back on the scene. And the amount of time dedicated to his unearned power-up is even more insulting, as Gohan proceeds to lose regardless, completing his transition.
And though there's a lot to talk about with Majin Vegeta and how much of a fan favorite he's become, We had barely gotten any time with Vegeta as a quote-unquote good guy before he was back to murdering innocent people, which makes the betrayal feel just a little bit rushed and hollow. And despite his rematch with Goku having some emotionally effective moments, the actual quality of the fight is a bit of a letdown.
But there's something worth bringing up here, more than maybe anywhere else on this list. The difference between the quality of the writing and how the series actually made you feel while these moments happened. Because while its issues regarding the writing are widely debated, there's no denying that the Buu Saga delivered some of the most memorable scenes, creative decisions, and unique techniques in the franchise which have stuck with fans years after the manga finished.
Fusion never decisively wins a single fight in all of Dragon Ball with the exception of the movies. Vegito does manage to save his friends and family, but his existence still genuinely feels more like Shueisha wanted new merch and Toriyama was trying to keep things fresh. But damn it, who doesn't love Vegito? Or Gogeta? Hell, Goten and Trunks aren't even characters all on their own, and Gotenks is probably the worst example of Fusion not accomplishing anything of value, but he is a f***ing gas. And Vegito's brutal, almost surgical deconstruction of Buu is one of the best beatdowns in a series of... Hey guys, does this have to be the last one, or...?
And despite Super Saiyan 3 ultimately feeling unearned and visually polarizing, its design is undoubtedly iconic, and that transformation is unforgettable. Super Saiyan 3 is a staple of the franchise now, and Gohan's ultimate design and his brief moment to shine are still beloved regardless of him handing back the mantle to Goku. And though I'm not a huge personal fan of the Saiyaman arc myself, that brief stint where we get to see Gohan living his life as a superhero and getting to know and fall for Videl are precious to a sizable amount of the fanbase.
And though Buu's lack of consistent form makes him hard to establish a firm, lasting connection throughout the plot, his amorphous nature also provides a wide variety of fascinating, unique personalities, all of which manage to leave a lasting impact in different ways. From Fat Buu's deadly innocence to Super Buu's unhinged malice to Kid Buu's chaotic insanity, what he lacks in depth, he makes up in variety. And Mr. Satan's relationship with Buu is surprisingly the emotional core of the entire saga, advancing both of their characters in significant ways that end up paying off big in the climax.
And man, despite the Majin Vegeta vs. Goku fight not quite being the sequel their Saiyan Saga clash deserved, the development Vegeta's descent provides him is a lot of fun to follow, even with its narrative issues. Between it being an intriguing character study and a tragic backslide for this listless ex-murderer, we find a lot to glom onto here. And the climax? The final explosion is iconic, and one of the most emotionally devastating moments in all of Dragon Ball. It's the culmination of Vegeta's countless sins, and could never be replicated in Dragon Ball again. I said...
And watching Vegeta finally admit Goku is number one, Satan pull out a massive W to save the entire universe, and Goku and the gang collectively stop Buu with a spectacular Spirit Bomb, it might be a messy ending, but it's still satisfying.
And it's important to note that these quirks in the writing were never new to Dragon Ball. The Buu Saga may just be the worst offender of the original manga. Toriyama's always flown by the seat of his pants. Sometimes they just accidentally slide off, which, if you think about it, is incredibly Toriyama. We've been hard on this saga in the past, perhaps unfairly so, and we hope that our criticism here isn't a meaningless echo. We just want to communicate our issues with it the best we can, while also singing its deserved praises. Buu isn't bad, it's just complicated.
What about the ending?
Oh, right, that's a thing.
Kind of easy to forget it's literally the ending of the original manga, isn't it? What with both GT and Super existing.
While we can all agree that the team effort culminating in the Genkidama against Kid Buu is a remarkable finale, up there with the best of them, Goku leaving with Oob is disarmingly abrupt, even though it is hinted at beforehand, and some folks found it unsatisfying as a proper ending to such a long story.
True, but there's an argument to be made that it's also in line with the nature of the series. Goku sees potential in this boy so much like Roshi did with him, and so he takes him under his wing, and even bestows him with Kintoun. Toriyama likely didn't want to give a definitive ending because his story was all about adventure and how the adventure never ends.
Man, one could say that GT's ending is unearned and overindulgent, but they both have their fans. Although, if we're already comparing, I'd argue that the end of the manga gives us a better version of Pawn than GT ever did.
Damn it, we gotta end this one on a high note.
Crap, what about the,
That scene where Buu is squeezing toothpaste onto his toothbrush, but it looks like poop.
8.
Alright, I'm psyched! Classic Dragon Ball has some of my favorite arcs in all of the franchise, and I could really use some positivity after those bottom 4.
Agreed. And luckily, we're through the worst of it. From here on out, there should be way less negativity.
I think this is the worst arc of the original manga.
Ireland's not even a real country.
I'm sorry, I know this list is a celebration of Dragon Ball, but if you watched my review of the King Piccolo saga over on my channel, Totally Not Mark,
Shameless, but hustle, respect, hustle.
I talk at length about how this arc is so rife with plot contrivances and ass pulls so blatant and galling, they put almost every other arc from the original manga to shame.
Truth is, I know what you're talking about. The King Piccolo saga, in a lot of ways, is a prototype for the rest of the series. Introducing an overwhelming force of evil, Goku will have to struggle with the death of his allies and brutal combat, overcoming his own failures and weaknesses in order to grow strong enough to win the day. Rinse and repeat. But in being the first to follow this simple yet brilliantly reliable structure, it has some wrinkles that would be ironed out in sagas to come.
But you know what? Let's compliment Sandwich this sumbitch. King Piccolo is a boss, and I mean that in every sense of the word, too. Until he gathers the Dragon Balls, he spends his time ordering around his musically inspired minions to do his bidding, conducting an orchestra of death for the world's greatest martial artists. But when he finally has to step out onto the battlefield, he towers over the rest of the cast, especially Goku. And unlike the Red Ribbon Army, there's a real sense of menace and danger, especially as the arc itself starts with the death
of Krillin.
Though fans of Dragon Ball would become accustomed to the death of heroes in sagas to come, the shock of such a loss capping off the 22nd tenkaichi budokai was a masterstroke on the behalf of Toriyama. This one act of violence sends Goku on a rampage, unlike any we'd seen before, almost getting him killed. It's chilling and even a little scary to see our sweet little monkey boy so distraught and thirsty for blood. It was a perfect way to challenge Goku as a character instead of merely as a fighter.
And despite all his rage, he's no match for King Piccolo, who brutalizes him, leaving him for dead before he kills Chaozu and Roshi, makes his wish on the Dragon Balls, and then blows up Shenron. It's brutal, it's devastating, and it ratchets up the despair way more than any other arc before it. And afterwards, he just walks straight into the King of the World's home, says, "This is my house, bitch," and then proceeds to set every prisoner on the planet free and starts a goddamn purge. It's insane, and it really sets the stage for the climax to come.
But the big issue with King Piccolo is that, as far as villains go, he's sort of textbook. For all the grief and guff we give the villain lineup of GT, King Piccolo's entire character is literally evil demon hell-bent on world domination. But if the biggest problems with this arc were its boilerplate villain, I'd be singing an entirely different tune. The real trouble starts with Toriyama's haphazard storytelling in this section. King Piccolo's introduction is rushed, poorly explained, and boring, having been released off-screen in a piece of throwaway dialogue by the Pilaf gang. And as you said, he almost kills Goku. But somehow his heart restarts after King Piccolo has left with no proper explanation. After which Yajirobe carries Goku up Korin Tower, a feat so unprecedented that it feels more like a joke. And finally, the water. The Super God Water, or Ultra Divine Water in the dub, is maybe the biggest cop-out in all of Dragon Ball. We would go on to see multiple characters' hidden potential be brought out in a myriad of ways after this arc, but here, it's a huge detriment to the story as it acts as a shortcut for Goku to almost immediately spring back against King Piccolo after a devastating loss. And yeah, the water putting him through body-wrecking pain that could potentially kill him isn't nothing, but it's not nearly narratively satisfying. It wouldn't be quite as insulting either if they hadn't introduced the Super God Water an arc after the Super Holy Water, or Sacred Water in the dub, which was in and of itself a fake-out of this exact plot device. Toriyama subverted the trope only to play it seriously the next chance he got.
Yeah, the Cho Seisui and the Cho Shinsui? You can't make this shit up.
But like we said before, when this arc premiered in the manga, the huge shift in tone combined with an increase in stakes was massive and would influence Dragon Ball for years to come. These moments of struggle, loss, and building despair rocket us towards an incredible final battle, with Goku showing up at the last minute to save the day. A staple in Dragon Ball from that point forward.
And truly, the fight is both effectively simple with its structure, yet incredibly satisfying with its execution. Goku puts King Piccolo on the back foot, forcing him to leverage Tenshinhan's life in order to crumple Goku's resolve, disabling limb after limb until the poor boy only has one arm left. But that proves enough, and we're treated to one of the most iconic takedowns in Dragon Ball.
And impressively, Toriyama makes sure to take King Piccolo's defeat as an opportunity to set up for the next arc. spitting up an egg and sending it off into the distance, entrusting his unborn clone son reincarnation with his ambitions and his revenge. It definitely helps to make this saga and the next to feel like a set, and leaves the viewer hyped for what's to come next.
Side note, did you all know that Toriyama essentially introduced Yajirobe so Mayumi Tanaka, voice actress for Krillin and Luffy in One Piece, would have a character to play in the anime while Krillin was dead? Goku even points out that they sound similar in the manga and the Japanese audio. And on that side note, I love Yajirobe in this arc. From his introduction to his gags, he feels right at home in the series, and it's nice to see that he doesn't overstay his welcome.
Honestly, I think you're both totally valid and on point with your reading of the material. We just happen to differ in how much certain aspects of the story affect our individual enjoyment. I do have a question for the both of you, though. Do you guys consider the meeting with Kami and Popo to be part of this arc or the next?
Actually, one of my favorite Dragon Ball YouTubers, Mr. Fusion, made a fantastic argument that it belongs in this saga, specifically because Krillin dies at the beginning, so it would only make sense that Krillin's revival would finish it, effectively bookending it.
This introduction comes with some fascinating lore and a great fulfilling training arc for Goku that does manage to take away some of the sting of the Super God Water. And though it definitely feels a tad convenient, what with Kami being able to create a new set of Dragon Balls to undo the slew of deaths that gave the story its weight, this meeting with Kami feels like a natural next step for Goku in his journey, and for the story as a whole.
I can't help but point out the hilarity that someone can ask, remember that time Goku met God? And you can just respond, which one?
It's also a little funny that Battle of Gods makes such a big deal out of godhood, considering Toriyama keeps whipping out a new deity every time the last one gets dunked on by Goku.
It's like Infinite Regress, only with gods.
Well, you know what they say, it's turtle hermits all the way down.
7.
You're really not just gonna use World Martial Arts Tournament, huh?
Nope, I've decided I've been too easy on you dub-only watchers. Besides, y'all already know how to say tenkaichi budokai, even if you have been saying it the wrong way around.
Could be worse. He could have used #1 Under Heaven Martial Arts Gathering.
Guys are being pretentious.
Faithful.
Pretentious aside, the 22nd World Martial Arts Tournament is technically the third tournament in the series, after the 21st and Fortune Teller Babas, respectively. Toriyama had his work cut out for him to make this one stand out, and he does so in an interesting way.
While Goku maintains his role as the main character, the story doesn't so much center around his development, but rather around Kame Sennin, with this being the last fight we'd see the old turtle hermit take part in the original manga, and Ten Shinhan, student of an opposing school and a troubled, struggling soul.
I love when Toriyama explores the internal struggles of his characters. Between his sublime expression work, his penchant for building drama, and Dragon Ball's fascinating world full of possibilities, it's a shame we don't see as much moral complexity in the rest of his work as we do here, because Ten Shinhan's journey through this arc is something special. It also provides a fantastic avenue for Roshi to finally pass the torch to his beloved students, and emphasizes the strengths of his teachings by using Ten Shinhan and the Crane School as a comparison.
Much like with the previous tournament, the qualifying rounds are a pretty light affair. It serves to establish our character roster and gives us a peek at the advancements our established cast made in the time skip after the previous arc. It also gives us a peek into the characters of Ten Shinhan and Chaozu, who manipulate the numbers of the drawing process so the matches can play out how they see fit. And then, our three-eyed antagonist lets us all know just how vicious he can be.
Dragon Ball is known for some brutal moments, but there's something so unsettling about Ten Shinhan breaking Yamcha's leg, largely because it's so unnecessary. He didn't have to go that far. Yamcha had already all but lost the match. But this wasn't about beating Yamcha, it was about sending a message. That Ten Shinhan is not to be taken lightly, and he has every intent on proving his superiority, even if it means ruining Kame Sennin's pupils.
It's hard to believe that after this devastating match, we jump immediately into a gag match with Roshi versus a reverse werewolf. It admittedly feels a bit like filler, but the punchline is pretty fantastic, and it provides some levity leading into Chaozu versus Krillin, which actually rides the line of being a gag match itself. While the tricks and techniques Chaozu uses to put Krillin on the ropes are both quirky and dangerous, the climax of it is an honest laugh. There aren't many matches like this in Dragon Ball, and I think there's a lot to appreciate in terms of creativity on every level.
There's also Pomput. But it's the next and last three matches that matter most, starting off with Roshi versus Ten Shinhan. Whereas in the last tournament, Roshi's primary goal was to keep Goku humble and hungry, here he's looking to change the heart of a talented young man traveling down a dark path. He breaks out all the stops, and even when Ten Shinhan threatens the lives of him and the audience with a surprise Kamehameha, he still pushes through. He wants to drive home that the Turtle School won't be so easily demolished before leaping off the stage, knowing that it's not his place to defeat Ten Shinhan.
But before that fateful match can happen, we finally get Goku versus Krillin. Sort of surprising that it took so long before we finally got a real fight between these two. And damn, is it fantastic, highlighting all of Toriyama's strengths. And in the Japanese version of the anime, it's accompanied by Mesase Tenkaichi, one of my favorite insert songs in the series. Even though we all know that Goku was never going to lose this match, it's still exciting, satisfying, and even touching to see these two rivals finally go toe-to-toe. These are two friends having fun, going all out, putting all their hard work to the test.
And while their match is happening, Roshi confronts Ten Shinhan one last time. He makes the point that Ten just isn't the kind of killer he longs to be. That deep down there is an ember of goodness burning bright enough to make him doubt the ambition of his master and his own misguided aspirations. This moment marks the turning point for his character, who has sworn to end Goku for what he did to Tao Pai Pai.
Using Mercenary Tao to fuel the Crane School's fervor is a fantastic pull on Toriyama's part. It ties Goku directly into the conflict instead of it merely being a matter of opposing schools. It's personal for Tien, who's idolized the assassin. When they step into the ring, he doesn't give Goku an inch. We actually talked in depth about this fight in our top 12 fights, where it ranked number 9 in the entire series. It's a doozy, and over the course of the match, Ten Shinhan is forced to not only confront Goku, but his friend, his master, and himself.
It blindsided a lot of people when Goku ultimately lost this match. After his loss at the 21st Tenkaichi Budokai, it seemed like a sure bet that Goku would firmly grasp the W this time. However, Goku's the first to touch outside the ring, and Ten Shinhan goes home the victor. And honestly, this subversion is superb, because the real victory here was pulling Ten Shinhan away from the dark side. And it's the perfect setup for the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai, where Goku's third try would ultimately be the charm.
Spoilers?
For Dragon Ball?
I don't know, you guys always made it a running joke, so I just wanted to do one.
Funny enough, it seems like we haven't had much bad to say about this arc. So why is it so far down on the list?
I think it comes down to scale. This is the shortest arc in all of Dragon Ball by chapters, and the entirety of it plays out as a tournament, meaning there's little variation in environment and the scope of the story is limited. Which isn't necessarily bad. This arc is a very personal affair with amazing fights and effective melodrama, but many of Dragon Ball's best sagas have higher stakes and a grander scale, which also aren't inherently positive qualities either, mind you.
Personally, I'm a fan of shorter, more focused stories with no wasted motions. The Buu Saga and Tournament of Power are great examples of bloat, with pacing issues aplenty.
But it's hard to ignore how Toriyama would go on to write further compelling, epic narratives with pathos and prophecy, and more variation and complexity, even in other tournaments.
Yeah, like the Universe 6 tournament.
No, he obviously meant the Otherworld tournament.
Actually, he probably means the 28th Tenkaichi Budokai.
Wait! The Toy-San Tournament of Champions.
That thing had a name?
That was its name?
6.
Just in time for Christmas, this entry comes tied with a ribbon.
It's the most colorful saga in all of Dragon Ball.
And it's conquering our hearts.
With the 21st Tenkaichi Budokai before this, Toriyama would slowly put more emphasis on action and drama in the story. Luckily, we'd first get what I consider one of the absolute best sagas of Dragon Ball. This is actually my number 4 pick, and honestly, in my top 5, the margins are slim.
The Red Ribbon Army as an antagonistic force is a very different animal from most of Dragon Ball. Though several other sagas would have fewer but incredibly powerful antagonists, many of them inhuman, this is a whole army of what are mostly just normal soldiers with differing levels of skill, all in service of a Napoleonic leader. Now, of course, this is Toriyama, so our, quote, normal human enemies, unquote, can still paralyze people with their minds or throw and ride pillars like they're speedrunning Breath of the Wild.
The saga also clocks in at 59 chapters, more than the last 2 before it combined, which means it has plenty of opportunity to explore multiple locations, encounter many different allies and enemies, and build the story into an epic climax. Though, epic isn't exactly the word I'd use. Because while Toriyama gives us an amazingly fun and fresh story that never sits still for a moment, the payoff is more on the emotional level in the Fortune Teller Baba arc rather than a cathartic level via the Red Ribbon Army.
Not to say that there isn't plenty of fantastic action to go around. Between Goku's perilous assault on Muscle Tower, the deadly pursuit of General Blue, and 2 incredible fights with Tao Pai Pai, you'll never find yourself bored. But in the case of Commander Red and Staff Officer Black,
素晴らしい
the actual climactic battle with the titular Red Ribbon isn't much to write home about, even if the events leading into it are some of my favorite moments in Dragon Ball. I'm sorry, but the reveal of Commander Red's ambitions being a product of his insecurities, only for Black to shoot him dead in response? How is this not in our top 3?
Beyond the action, there's also so many fantastic character elements throughout. To call the Red Ribbon Army a colorful cast would be, well, incredibly corny, but also correct. From suave to silly, menacing to murderous, ruthless to useless, it's just so much fun to watch Goku work his way through that rainbow, and even make some friends along the way, including everyone's favorite Frankenstein's monster-inspired Robro, Ader. I'm actually surprised he's never mentioned in the Android arc, especially considering that Android 16 is essentially Ader 2.0. 8 times 2.
It's also worth noting that this may be one of the funniest sagas in the entire franchise. Murasaki's the best, and I will never get over the scene with the Nyoibo. I'll be on my deathbed, and my death rattle will be me giggling like an idiot. Also, the Dr. Slump crossover is hilarious, adorable, and an all-around treat. Ignoring what the anime does to General Blue's character.
But we'd be remiss not to talk more in depth about Mercenary Tao. As anyone who's seen our villains list will know, we have a particular soft spot for this fashion-forward assassin.
And no, it's not a hole in our heads made by his tongue.
That introduction may be one of the most memorable in Dragon Ball. He literally tongues a man to death.
And ladies, he's single.
Afterward, he murders Bora in cold blood, curb stomps Goku, and pieces out with his balls like the world's deadliest veterinarian. And this sets up for Goku climbing Kaden's tower and provides him with a new goal besides stopping the Red Ribbon Army. Revive Bora, Upa's father.
As we mentioned in the King Piccolo review, the Sacred Holy Water is a fake-out. The actual effort to retrieve it was the real training, conveying the moral, there are no shortcuts to strength, which the franchise would frequently and aggressively undermine as time went on. Here though, it's an incredibly simple yet effective way for Goku to make the necessary strides in order to win his critical rematch against Tao.
This saga is also where we're introduced to the Sensu, magical beans that return you to full health. These would become a staple of the series, and luckily, Toriyama would do his best to use them as a way to keep the plot moving rather than ways to resolve conflict. Because an instant undo button on major, even mortal wounds could very easily have robbed the series of tension, as opposed to the Dragon Balls, which, never mind.
Goku would then assault the Red Ribbon base and win the day, dismantling the army and ending their siege. But whereas some folks consider this to be the end of this saga, some of us believe that it actually ends with the Fortune Teller Baba arc, where Goku would find the final Dragon Ball necessary to wish back Bora, but also meet his grandfather one last time.
I love this finale. While the lead up to Goku meeting his grandfather again is mostly your average entertaining Dragon Ball comedy, complete with some choice manga panels, this reunion means a lot for Goku and the audience. We see pure joy, love, and nostalgia, and it adds all that much more narrative weight to Goku using the Dragon Balls to wish back Upa's father. Dragon Ball doesn't have too many heartfelt moments like this, but when they hit, they demolish.
Also, the Pilaf gang shows back up. It's really funny, but they don't add much other than to give Goku another outfit and make American audiences super uncomfortable. Also a playable character in Budokai Tenkaichi 3.
The Red Ribbon Army arc may not appeal to all Dragon Ball fans, but for many, this saga is the whole package. Action, adventure, comedy with a sincere emotional finale over 100 chapters in the making. A hallmark for the franchise.
Also, Husky.
Oh, Husky.
5.
Here we are again with the top 5. For the last time.
Aw, are you getting emotional, Kaiser?
I can't help it! We've been doing these for more years than there are Dragon Balls.
Well, if it cheers you up any, the top 5 starts off with a classic Dragon Ball arc.
You're right, Mark. That does cheer me up.
The 21st Tenkaichi Budokai is the second arc of the series and the first tournament of the franchise. Hot off the mystical adventure of the Pilaf saga, Goku decides to hunt down the old man who sexually harassed the 16-year-old girl to train under him like his grandpa did before. Upon reaching Kame House, Goku would proceed to meet his lifelong friend and temporary rival Krillin, and the two would begin training with one another.
This arc is also another one on the shorter side, but it hits every story beat exceptionally well. From the fun, character-rich training segments with Krillin and Goku, to the early matches full of comedy and creativity, to the climactic showdown between master and pupil, this arc is packed full of heart, and it would lay a lot of groundwork for the series moving forward.
The early chapters with Goku and Krillin are truly iconic. Their struggle with the Turtle Hermit's unconventional training methods, combined with their conflicting personalities, coupled with Roshi's lecherous nature and Lynch's sneezing gimmick, all make for an amazingly fun read. And the focus on Goku's purity definitely sets him apart from other shonen protagonists of the time. His love for martial arts and battle stem from his passion for self-improvement. And that fire never dies.
And that hunger for personal improvement, and also literally any food within a 10-foot radius, is the major point of conflict in this story. There is no traditional antagonist, but rather Goku's drive as a fighter, and the possibility of that ambition being lost should he come out on top. Which is why Roshi dons a silly wig and loses his glasses in order to keep Goku from becoming number one under the heavens.
Goku and Krillin's aspirations for improving themselves are insanely infectious. You want to root for them, watch them continue to improve, and break every record set before them. So when Roshi steps up to keep them in line, there's a great conflict at play. You want to see them come out on top, but you also know that Roshi has a point. That if they get a taste for victory too soon, it's possible that their motivation may take a hit, that they'll become complacent. So despite how much the audience comes to love these two goofballs and wants to see them succeed, you also want to see them fail.
It's nothing incredibly deep, of course, but for a story aimed at kids, it more than does the job of providing an engaging conflict and interesting moral. One that explores the characters of Goku, Roshi, and the concept of martial arts and self-improvement as a whole. But screw the morals, screw the story. Those aren't what people watch Dragon Ball for. How are the fights?
Considering this is still early on in Dragon Ball, it's impressive just how much Toriyama brings to the table here in terms of creativity and variety. Krillin vs. Bacterian is pure gross-out humor, opening the tournament up with one of the best meta jokes of the franchise with Krillin's nose.
I won't lie, watching all of Z before OG Dragon Ball made this joke hit even harder. Over a decade of watching them never address it, only for it to happen here against the perfect opponent, it's priceless.
After that, our good lad Yamcha begins his long, illustrious career of jobbing in his fight with Jackie Chun. It's pointedly funny that Yamcha also recognizes that it's Roshi, at least establishing him as the smartest guy in the room even if he's not the strongest.
After this, we get a match that could have only taken place in the 80s with Nam vs. Ranfan, followed up by Goku vs. Giran, a fun, clever fight that does come with some cheap saves on Goku's part. But the real standout, besides the climax, is Roshi vs. Krillin, which besides including some fantastic action, also has some of the most memorable gags from any of the tournaments.
Goku vs. Namu is much more action-oriented, showcasing some brutal blows and amazing tenacity from both fighters. It also has a feel-good resolution with Roshi providing Namu all he needs to save his poor village. But then, finally, it's the match we've all been waiting for, Goku vs. Jackie Chun. And it's a doozy.
The Kamehameha, Junkin, Drunken Fist, Crazy Fist, the Sleepy Boy technique, the Thunder Shock Surprise, and even a giant monkey! There's no end to how wild and crazy this fight gets, with more twists and turns than we could possibly spend time talking about here. And through it all, the emotional core remains. Roshi's dedication to preserving Goku's passion for the martial arts.
And though the final blow almost ends with a double KO, Jackie stands triumphant, marking Goku's first loss at the Tenkaichi Budokai, but also his first true step towards greatness. This is such an important moment for Goku, giving him both a taste of defeat and a taste of what lies ahead of him. There's always a bigger fish, and if we know anything about Goku, he's never met a fish he couldn't catch.
Later arcs would present greater stakes, including the very universe, but sometimes there's no better emotional leverage than the heart and soul of a character you love. Watching Roshi and Goku battle isn't so satisfying because of the actual choreography and animation, which are quite good for the time, mind you, but instead because of their investment and the meaning behind the fight.
Traditional tournament arcs are always tricky. While they're fantastic at setting up individual battles, building an organic narrative can be a struggle. Luckily, Toriyama caught on quickly on how to balance action, comedy, and story in his tournaments, giving us some of the best in anime. And it all started here.
You know, I'm willing to bet that Toriyama had no idea the kind of conversations he was going to start between fans with Roshi blowing up the moon, considering how utterly obsessed many of them would become with power levels and feats.
Yeah, don't get me started on this fandom's feet fetish.
I don't like that.
4.
You do know that this is the 4th time Cell has been in 4th place on DBcember, right?
Number 4 in our top 24 villains, number 4 in our top 12 fights, number 4 in our top 12 transformations, Now this.
We swear this is a coincidence. Also, really funny.
We assume the placement of Cell is going to be a controversial one, polarizing even. Hell, for me, it's my number one pick. This saga's full of amazing battles, unforgettable drama, and a climax that puts not only other arcs, but other whole anime to shame.
For me, it's not in my top 5. Not that I dislike it, it just has some fundamental issues that keep it from being my favorite.
I had it as my number 4, so frankly, this is perfect.
This saga begins with the return of Frieza. No, not that one. Or that one. As a perfect way to start off a saga literally all about androids and cyborgs, our frosty fiend arrives on Earth complete with cybernetic replacements and a big, horny daddy. But before he can wreak havoc, a young man equipped with a sword and Super Saiyan shows up to bisect him and sends his papa to hell in kind. Also, what is it with Trunks cutting people in half?
What a way to introduce a character. Frieza was far and away the biggest bad the series had ever seen, so to see him jobbed this thoroughly and in such an incredibly awesome manner, it's hype as all hell.
Number 9 on our most iconic moments in Dragon Ball, check it out.
And afterwards, we get to meet Goku again and learn that this stranger is actually Vegeta and Bulma's son from the future, and that the apocalypse by way of Skynet is coming. And atop all that, Goku dies of a heart virus before he can help try to stop it.
It's a pretty insane beginning to the saga, and this sets up for mysteries, conflicts, death, and some of the series' most harrowing moments. We'd meet androids, cyborgs, Jinzo Ningen, and see our little crybaby Gohan grow into his own as the conflicts of his father's past come back to haunt them all.
In terms of our main antagonists, the androids in Cell are undeniably iconic. Their designs and personalities are full of Toriyama's charm and aesthetic. The androids' devil-may-care attitudes are a stark contrast to Cell's single-minded devotion to his perfection, but their menace is felt all the same, especially when these terror teens wreck the entire Dragon team.
Although I'd absolutely love to see the timeline where Toriyama's editors didn't make him change androids 19 and 20 from being the main villains. Where would he have even gone if that were the case? Would android 20 be able to transform as well? Would we still have gotten Cell?
Speaking of timelines, Toriyama definitely seemed to have taken some inspiration from the Terminator franchise. This saga plays a lot with time travel, adding a neat layer of complexity and mystery to the plot. Trunks coming back to the past sends a ripple effect that creates new problems, and even paves the way for Cell's perfection. Unfortunately, Toriyama does occasionally find himself struggling a bit with the trickiness of time travel.
Yeah, and the story isn't helped by the insane amount of editorial interference. Or maybe it was helped, who's to say? But the constant rewrites and redesigns definitely made this journey feel a lot rockier and haphazard in several places. Don't get me started on the absurdity of Dr. Gero making androids 17 and 18 the power source necessary for Cell's perfection, or Goku's absolute bullshit explanation of why they don't just find Dr. Gero and stop him from making the androids.
If I were Bulma, I'd have gone rogue and had Shenron teleport Jiro into the sun.
But even with those narrative hiccups, there are just so many moments here that have stuck with me and many other fans over the years. The androids' first fight against our heroes leading to Vegeta's iconic arm break, Kami and Piccolo reuniting and finally bringing an end to their conflict, Cell's wicked and horrifying introduction in Nikki Town, Piccolo vs. 17, Tien's Shin Kikoho, Cell becoming perfect, one of the coolest fights in the series with Goku vs. Cell, Goku's sacrifice, and Gohan's transformation and... as I said before, one of the best climaxes in anime.
And those are just the bigger moments. This saga is long and winding, with plenty of mysteries and fascinating reveals, and it feels like the entire cast gets to be directly involved. It's admittedly a little frustrating that the main crux of the saga takes so long to get moving, as we're introduced to antagonist after antagonist until we arrive at Cell, who himself still goes through several radical transformations.
That's truly a shame too, because while Perfect Cell's design is definitely memorable and his personality is serviceable, his first form is the most unique all around. He's a movie monster, stalking humans and devouring them for sustenance, and it's a shame that we lose many of those features after he absorbs Android 17. Of course, a big old insect man might not have played so well with audiences, especially leading into the climax, so we can at least understand that the decision to make him more traditionally attractive might very well have been the right one.
But regardless of Cell's design, he facilitates some amazing growth for several characters. We see Goku grow as a father and as a protector of the Earth. We see Vegeta grow as he struggles with being an ex-villain who now has something to protect on Earth. and Piccolo comes to terms with his past by fusing with Kami, and Trunks learns that he's a giant f*** up with the best of intentions. But ultimately, it's Gohan that's put center stage, and watching him come into his own still sends chills down my spine to this day.
Not to continue being the wet blanket,
Said the soggy duvet.
but some of the issues we see him struggling with here seem a little manufactured. And while I'm certainly a fan of showing over telling, it would have been nice to have gotten some time with Gohan to explore these particular struggles.
It's a problem that's worse in the manga, where a lot of time spent with Gohan and Goku training is missing, meaning that Gohan's actual involvement with this arc is incredibly minimal, to the point where his involvement in the Cell games is a big surprise to everyone, and I'd argue, not a good surprise. Not to say that the moment where he transforms isn't absolutely epic, or that his defeat of Cell isn't absolutely the climax you've made it out to be, but the build-up feels inadequate, with more time in this saga spent on characters like Vegeta, Trunks, and Piccolo, rather than on the one who matters most in this finale.
But like we said with the Buu saga, sure you can put these stories under a microscope and deconstruct them to a fine point on a narrative level, but damn it, watching 16 plead his case with Gohan only to be snuffed out, leaving Gohan to finally break through that last wall in one of the most gorgeously framed transformations in the series, scored to perfection by Unmei no Hi in the anime? It doesn't matter if the build-up was lacking, the moment is a triumph. The culmination of Gohan's character over 4 years in the making.
And the father-son Kamehameha will be etched into my brain until I die. The last desperate beam struggle dwarfing any other in the series. It's just so fucking cool! No other finish in Dragon Ball hits like this. Narrative issues be damned. The finale of this arc cemented Gohan as a fan favorite for a lot of people, which, as we mentioned, would be a point of contention in later material, but f that. Here, in this moment, in this arc, it's awesome!
In a lot of ways, the Android saga feels like a finale, which is only bolstered by the fact that after this, we get the longest time skip in the manga up until that point at 7 years. In all honesty, I can see why people believe that this was where Toriyama wanted to end it. With an epilogue, this would have been a bittersweet but genuinely fulfilling conclusion.
Yeah, but ending up the Cell saga? I mean, that'd be a terrible idea.
Is Kaiser okay?
We regret nothing, Mark.
3.
The 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai is the final arc of OG Dragon Ball's anime, a delineation not made in the manga. There are plenty of reasons thrown around for Toei to separate the anime, ranging from the change in overall direction of the story, to Toei wanting to market it as a new show, with all the marketing advantages that would provide them. And as we'd see, this arc does in many ways provide a thrilling finale to this stage of Goku's life.
Hot off a 3-year time skip, we're quickly reintroduced to our lovable cast, many of them sporting some fresh new designs. And though a taller, more adult Krillin is definitely a surprise, nothing quite beats seeing Goku now fully grown. And while for American audiences who started with Z, this would seem to be a return to form,
For Japanese audiences, this must have been wild. Over 165 chapters and 3 whole years of Kid Goku. And now, he's all grown up. It's a pretty monumental, even daring decision on the part of Toriyama, as it fundamentally affected Goku's iconic design. Then again, I'm a Naruto fan, so it's not like I haven't had the chance to experience something similar in real time.
By the way, if you want to, you can check out my Naruto review series over on my channel, Totally Not Mark.
luckily his design still cuts that distinct silhouette, and while he is aged up here, we see him back in that classic gi. And more importantly, his crucial innocent personality is intact, though he is markedly more mature in many ways.
Honestly, this may be my favorite version of Goku. It's a perfect combination of playful and experienced. After his training with God, he seemingly achieved a sense of serenity, a calm confidence that plays well into his cheerful nature. And each solution he pulls out over the course of the tournament is just so satisfying, because we've seen him grow into the fighter he is today. Though I'll never forget Toriyama for getting rid of Goku's tail for good in this arc.
But the bigger reveal of this saga is a full-grown Piccolo Jr. While we got small, adorable peeks at him in the arc prior, here he's fully matured and out for revenge for what Goku did to his father. The most noticeable change in his design is that he's significantly younger looking than King Piccolo was, thinner and more angular, and sports a brand new, now iconic outfit. We also find over the course of the tournament that he's more complex than his father ever was.
Speaking of the tournament, this is, in our opinion, the best Toriyama ever wrote. Though we don't begrudge his more gag-oriented matches from previous tournaments, here, It feels like there's very little fat. Each match contributes to the greater story, and it all starts with the first match.
We're introduced to Cyborg Tao in the preliminaries, where he conveniently removes Chaozu from the plot. And while it's certainly a surprise to see him back, and deadlier than ever, his inclusion in the tournament is solely to provide Ten Shinhan closure after the 22nd Tenkaichi budokai. Which doesn't make this match bad, far from it. It's just maybe the weakest of the matches by virtue of it not contributing to the overall story of this arc. But immediately after this, we find Goku versus
Name withheld! I mean, Chi-Chi. Honestly, it's hard to say whether or not Toriyama played the long game with this one or if he just so happened to make the perfect pull at the perfect time. I'm not sure which would be more impressive, honestly, because having a character that we haven't seen for 3 years suddenly reappear organically and with a monumental twist to the plot, either way you have to give this man kudos, especially with the subtle hints we're given to let us know that it's her. From her accent to her hair to the promise she mentions to Goku. And the reveal of Goku mistaking marriage for food? Peak Goku. It's a fun, monumental match that would forever change our protagonist's life and the very course of the series as a whole.
But screw romance, because the next match is one of my favorites, and it's arguably Krillin's best fight in the franchise. We know from the outset that Krillin isn't going to win this match. Hell, he knows it. As such, this fight isn't really about whether or not Krillin can win, but whether or not he can prove himself as a worthy opponent. Not just to Piccolo, but to the audience. Krillin's always played second fiddle to Goku, and despite his impressive outings before, he's struggled a lot. So we're essentially prepared here for a jobbing. But this plays out as anything but, with Krillin managing to straight up shock Piccolo with his strength, tenacity, and strategy. Though our brave bald boy takes the L, he proves to Piccolo that this fight won't be as easy as he thinks.
This acknowledgement on Piccolo's part is also an important indicator that he is not the same character as his father. He takes this revelation in stride and even shows a budding, begrudging respect, which all on its own makes him a more compelling character.
But no time to talk about that because next is Yamcha versus Shen! Oh, Yamcha, you poor, poor bastard. First chance in the series of getting past the quarterfinals and Toriyama throws you up against God. And while Yamcha whips out a brilliant new technique with an amazing direct hit proving he's still definitely an outstanding fighter, he is still but a stepping stone for Kami to get to Piccolo. But this reveal is also fascinating, and a great wrinkle to the arc. God refuses to stay passive here like he did with King Piccolo, and he's even hijacked a person's body just to hide who he is to get closer to Junior.
Before those two can meet in the ring, we first need the biggest rematch in this series so far with Tien Shinhan versus Goku. Now this is a fantastic fight, but its main purpose here? To give us an idea of just how far Goku has come between King Piccolo and now. Oh, and also reintroduce the weighted clothing. Tien is outclassed here, and when he busts out the multiform technique, Goku just shows how wide their gap has become by instantly recognizing its weakness and defeating him effortlessly.
Leading to God meeting his nephew in the ring. And as it turns out, God's no slouch. He does everything he can to put down his evil half, even including the Mappa technique, which our pickle lad learned how to reverse, putting God in a bottle and swallowing him down, keeping him safe in his tum-tum, leaving only Goku versus Piccolo Jr. And this match, well,
it's our number 2 fight in all of Dragon Ball.
It's our number 2 fight in all of Dragon Ball.
If you want to see a real breakdown of this fight, as well as many others that we've probably talked about previously, check out our DBcember list from 2018.
An interesting aspect about this fight is how many of its biggest beats would return in the next arc, but to different effect. Goku and Piccolo's beam struggle, Piccolo growing giant, Goku's legs being disabled. Which isn't to take away from either fight, the parallels are mostly fascinating. Make no mistake, this fight is very much its own beast.
It's a beautiful, remarkable fight, as creative as it is brutal, and the win on Goku's part is genuinely one of the most harrowing, desperate victories in all of Dragon Ball. But it's a victory all the same, and this finally sees Goku as the champion. It's the journey he's been on since he began training with Roshi, and through it all, his goal has been clear. Improve for the sake of self-improvement. Not money, not glory, not pride, but just to be better and protect those around him.
I also love how Goku just gives Piccolo a senzu bean, hoping that a bit of kindness and promise of a better fight would help him come around. And how he tells Kami, "No thanks, God, I don't want your job."
It's worth noting that this saga might have made our number 2, or even number 1, if it had been both grander in scale and hadn't relied on the tournament formula. Though it is arguably the best tournament in Dragon Ball, it's also Toriyama's 3rd go at it. And while it nails almost every single note, it's a song we've heard before. And it's one with built-in narrative limitations that keep us locked into a very narrowly focused story. But in that same vein, Toriyama works wonders within these limitations, and the story is one of the best paced and executed in Dragon Ball.
We got really granular in this review, partially because we wanted to emphasize just how little time is wasted in every fight, how incredible each encounter is, and just how phenomenal Toriyama nails this tournament. The last two Tenkaichi Budokai were fantastic in their own rights, but in many ways, they were all leading up to this, where Goku could show the fruits of his labor, beat the bad guy, save the world, get the girl, and soar off into the sunset.
This genuinely feels like the end of an era. Hell, the manga frames this finale as so monumental, Toriyama made sure to add a little Roshi at the bottom of the page to inform us that, don't worry, there's still more Dragon Ball to come. It's just so emotionally satisfying on every single level that, if it really had ended here, it would have felt right. Also, Manga Fushigi Adventure is the best Dragon Ball opening. I will not be taking any questions, thank you.
2.
You know, some people might argue that going into space is jumping the shark.
Could be worse. Toriyama could result to time travel.
Or open up a multiverse.
What if they made an evil Goku?
Or if they kept revealing new gods to replace the old ones?
Or started giving characters transformations instead of actual character growth.
So this saga is a wild ride, y'all. Hot off the heels of the Saiyan saga, where the entire series was frankly flipped on its side, half the cast is f***ing dead or in a hospital. And with God pulling a Nietzsche, there are no Dragon Balls to bring him back. So Bulma, Krillin, and Gohan have to Star Trek to Namek, Piccolo's newly revealed homeworld, and their only hope. But when they arrive, they'll find more than peaceful Namekians. They'll find a terror beyond hell.
The moment our intrepid Earthlings arrive on Namek, everything that could go wrong essentially does. Followed not only by Vegeta, but a far more imposing threat in the sadistic Frieza, these opening chapters are a scramble for everyone involved. And before you know it, there are more moving parts than Dragon Ball had ever had to deal with before. Yet none of it feels difficult to keep track of. And instead it just builds a sense of anxiety and excitement as characters change locations, come into conflict, steal Dragon Balls, and either bluff their way out of confrontations, or blast their way out of them.
One of the most unique aspects of this arc is how little Goku factors into its first half. While Dragon Ball would be no stranger to sidelining Goku until he was absolutely necessary, he'd be largely out of play for the first 36 chapters of this 88-chapter saga, giving Krillin, Gohan, and Vegeta a lot of focus early on. This makes for a fascinating dynamic because without Goku there, several of these characters would have to play the world's most dangerous game of cat and mouse mixed with Don't Wake Daddy. And in this case, Daddy be Frieza.
And Frieza as a villain is one of the best Toriyama's ever written, if not the best. And his introduction is top f***ing notch. His interrogation and subsequent slaughter of the Namekian village communicates everything you need to know about him. He radiates sadism, underlining his aggressively condescending politeness to great effect. You come to positively despise this motherfucker, but you also can't look away when he's at his absolute worst, like Christoph Waltz in Inglourious Bastards.
That's a bingo.
The subservience of Dodoria and Zarbon does a lot to communicate his strength, as does the way that every character familiar with Frieza speaks about him. He is not a king to be served, he is a god to be feared.
This arc also ties Frieza directly to Goku and the rest of the Saiyans' history. He wasn't only their absolute ruler, he was the one who eliminated their planet, leaving only a handful of them alive. His genocide of Goku and Vegeta's race ties him directly to their fates, and though this is most definitely a retcon on Toriyama's part, it does a lot to elevate the narrative of this conflict, while also making it personal. And though Goku may not value his Saiyan heritage, he will inherit the responsibility of avenging all of that death and destruction that Frieza wrought.
Frieza isn't the only villain of the arc that stands out though. Zarbon and Dodoria proved to be formidable minions, and the Ginyu Force helped shake the arc up in an amazing way. Their bombastic personalities are combined with radical violence, all the while homaging Super Sentai of the time. They all provide interesting techniques and spectacular battles and put our heroes on the brink of death more than once. But above all else, the minions provide conflict and development for one particular character, Vegeta.
To say that Vegeta is the star of the first half of the arc is an understatement.
I honestly believe it's the best he'd ever been written in the entire original manga.
Although Krillin, Gohan, and to a lesser extent Bulma are our protagonists in this first half, it's Veggie who really gets to shine, as he takes both an active and reactive role throughout. Thanks to Frieza's inability to read power levels and his scouters being destroyed, Vegeta is able to sneak around and operate in the shadows, all the while slaughtering the guilty and innocent alike in order to collect the Dragon Balls. And though he's still undeniably a villain here, his contrast and conflict with Frieza make him seem almost like an anti-hero in comparison. Almost.
This was far from Toriyama's first time pitting a previous arc's big bad up against its current. But unlike with Piccolo and Tenshinhan, Vegeta is still rotten to the core, meaning every action he takes against Frieza is also against our heroes. And when Krillin and Gohan are put in between the rock and a hard place of having to choose Vegeta over Frieza, they have every reason to feel conflicted.
Of course, not long before Goku arrives, Vegeta's part in the story essentially mimics Piccolo's. He must join forces with Earth's heroes in order to stop Frieza from attaining victory. But where Piccolo would make an heroic sacrifice, Vegeta would get everything he had coming to him.
That all you got?
But you have to give it to Toriyama. Even though he'd shown Vegeta to be an unrepentant murderer, you still feel the slightest bit of sympathy as Frieza brutally dismantles his proud confidence with a pervasively vicious glee.
Speaking of Piccolo, Toriyama cleverly brings him back to life in order to set up a brilliant gambit. With him alive, Kami and Popo are able to bring the Earth Dragon Balls together in order to ultimately save the day. We also get to see Piccolo return to his homeworld, discover a prototype of what would become fusion later down the road, and help keep everyone alive long enough for Goku to do the thing!
Regarding Goku, he's, well, a bit of a tough topic. Much of the major conflict on Namek happens with him either on his way to the planet itself or out of commission in the healing tank. He doesn't really feel like a vital part of the narrative for a majority of the saga. Once he arrives, he provides us with some impressive examples of just how much he's grown. And while we're absolutely thrilled to see him here to save the day, he still feels a little out of place at first.
But as Vegeta lay dying, we see him bestow the burden of defeating Frieza upon Goku. This elite, shattered and fading, must entrust this lower-class warrior to finish what he could not. And Goku solemnly accepts. He may not value his own Saiyan heritage, but he recognizes both Vegeta as a warrior and Frieza as a tyrant. And with all the pain and suffering he's already caused his friends and family, he's made it his personal mission to put Frieza down. After getting to know Vegeta over the course of the last two sagas and knowing what this means to him, this scene hits hard.
What follows next is the longest fight in the franchise, both famously and infamously.
There's a desperation that slowly mounts as Goku realizes just how utterly outmatched he truly is. His strongest attack hits Frieza head-on and it does little but singe his hand, so he's forced to use the Spirit Bomb. And unlike the one on Earth, this sucker's massive. And while it doesn't quite get the job done, the sight of such a huge version of the attack has stuck with audiences for years. It's really freaking cool.
And it all leads up to one of the most spectacular moments in Dragon Ball.
Hey guys, look! It's my Jutsu impression! Goodbye, yet!
Goku turning Super Saiyan. We've mentioned it in other countdowns, but it bears repeating. This changed Dragon Ball. This scene of anger, desperation, and horror created something new, dazzling, and game-changing that would inspire countless other properties for decades to follow.
Super Saiyan Son Goku is iconic. From the build-up to the climax to Goku's destruction of Frieza, we see a legend fulfilled. It feels as if Goku's whole life has led up to this one point. Following this transformation, we get what feels like an exercise in catharsis as Frieza is demolished. And Frieza's desperate gamble of blowing up the planet leading to a harrowing countdown to destruction makes for a fantastic set piece. At the end though, it's Frieza's hubris that seals his defeat, and we watch as Goku is possibly lost, along with the vanishing world.
But
The moment Frieza enters the fray, the pacing of the story slows to an absolute crawl.
and it's only made worse in the anime. Every joke, every meme you've heard about Dragon Ball's bad pacing, that's exemplified here.
Goku's fight with Frieza does have some impeccably well-crafted shots though, with stellar composition. And there's still plenty of creativity throughout.
Also, while Goku embracing his Saiyan heritage is conceptually interesting, he'd already established that he considered himself an Earthling before anything else, and his connection to this extinct race are tenuous at best. So to see him say, "I am the Super Saiyan Son Goku," rings the slightest bit hollow. Furthermore, this arc introduces an issue that would plague Dragon Ball for years to come: power creep.
Power levels in Dragon Ball have always been a source of consternation. While their introductions serve the plot of the Saiyan saga to help communicate the divide in strength between characters, these numbers would balloon to proportions that would soon hurt the narrative far more than help it. And some characters are used to questionable effect.
Bulma does not need to be in this story at all. Toriyama wanted to call back to the classic hunt for the Dragon Balls by including Krillin and Gohan, Goku's son, but this story ultimately ended up sidelining her in a really bad way. Funny enough, I think this is one of the reasons a lot of OG dub fans didn't like her. They were introduced to her at her worst. Luckily, the following sagas utilized her much more effectively. And hey, it's after she has a kid, so it's kind of like the inverse of Videl, Chi-Chi, and Android 18.
And Frieza's use of transformations here is the worst iteration of this trope. It's too convenient, and thus makes prior conflicts feel less meaningful. But this saga managed to make it this high on the list. How? Because despite its shortcomings, this arc manages to accomplish some amazing feats.
Taking us to another world, introducing us to one of the most marvelous villains in the franchise, utilizing Vegeta to perfection with a stellar, exciting first half, and giving us an amazing transformation that Goku is put through hell to unlock in its second, all facilitating one of the most climactic showdowns in anime history on a dying planet.
Though it makes its fair share of mistakes along the way, this arc attempts to do a lot. And there's something to be said about a story and a storyteller that tries something new and epic. We can accept that it's got its flaws, but we all remember being glued to our seats and our manga volumes thrilled at what was coming next. It honestly can't be emphasized enough just how grandiose this part of the story feels and the gravitas that comes with it. We do criticize the ballooning power levels, but it still feels insane when Frieza reveals where his base form sits, and those transformations continue to ratchet up the fear and despair for our characters. This saga is ambitious, climactic, and a total thrill ride, and has stuck with fans for years after.
I'll also highly recommend that if you're looking to rewatch this arc, try out Kai, especially if you're going to watch it in English. It cuts down a lot of the pacing issues with the original anime, while also making some fixes from the manga. Also, Christopher Ayers' Frieza is untouchable in English, providing a performance that is a standout of the franchise. Love and laughter always, man.
Love and laughter always.
Love and laughter always.
Number 1.
Why does this feel so hard?
Because you love Dragon Ball?
And you love talking about Dragon Ball.
Yeah. I just can't believe this is the last one. The last entry of the last DBcember.
Well then, guess we better give it our all, huh?
Right. The Saiyan Saga is, in our opinion, the best representation of everything that Dragon Ball is. In our opening arc, we're introduced to a revelation that fundamentally changes the series, with the reveal that our main character, Goku, is actually part of an alien race. This revelation would bring great violence, despair, but also growth, as Goku's unknown lineage suddenly catches up to him and his home, and wreaks havoc in its wake.
We've talked about this in the past, but Raditz's reveal of Goku's alien origin is such a monumental moment. Rightfully, it eclipses the reveal that they're related, which for Goku obviously wouldn't really mean anything. He's grown up on Earth and his real family doesn't include Raditz. Though Raditz doesn't last long, Goku loses his life and finds himself making his way to another new master in the afterlife, who would train him to face an even bigger looming threat.
Goku and Piccolo versus Raditz is a great fight to start off this saga with. Though it might not rank high for many fans in terms of its overall quality, watching these two rivals forced to struggle against a frightening new opponent is exciting, and you can feel the desperation as they throw together a plan. One that ultimately ends in Goku's death. That's right, our main character has died. In a series where death means nothing, true, but it's still a beautifully done, if not immensely brutal moment. And his death even manages to move the plot forward with the introduction of King Kai.
Goku has had many masters: Kame Sennin, Karin, Popo and Kami, Whis, and among them, for me, King Kai ranks pretty high, just below Roshi, by virtue of him being so unconventional, colorful, and playing such a huge role in the material to come. And his training conditions for Goku are also a lot of fun. And the mere concept of death being a pathway, or in this case, Snake Way, to self-improvement is a neat, spiritually fascinating concept, perfect for a story inspired by Journey to the West.
During all that, though, Piccolo takes Gohan under his tutelage. After seeing the boy explode with a power that dwarfs both him and his rival, Piccolo is hell-bent on molding Goku's wimpy son into a fighter capable of protecting the Earth. And part of that process involves survival training, aka leaving a 4-year-old in the wilderness to fend for himself, and what follows is actually exceptionally heartwarming, as we see Piccolo slowly come around on this poor, vulnerable kid. It's effective storytelling on Toriyama's part, and a level of emotional interaction and growth he rarely explores.
During all of this, our gang heads up to Kami's lookout to train, and while the manga doesn't show us any of it, the anime goes a long way to help expand on their development. Unfortunately, no amount of training could prepare them for the Saiyans, who, upon their first appearance, decimate an entire city with a single casual attack. It's an intense moment of destruction that dwarfs any we've seen before, and effectively shows us just how strong these two enemies really are, especially when you consider the one who delivers the attack is Nappa, who answers to his diminutive, domineering partner, Vegeta. It's a fantastic introduction.
Once our Dragon team arrives on the battlefield, they have very little time to reminisce before the fight gets underway. And between the Saibai men and Nappa, the brutality here is a grisly sight. Though we're introduced to amazing new techniques and team-ups, fighter after fighter is felled, tragedy topping tragedy, all culminating in Piccolo, the reincarnated Demon King, sacrificing his life for a child, not even his own. It's a powerful scene, and it's the perfect climax for Piccolo's growth up until this point. Luckily, before Gohan and Krillin can meet the same fate,
Goku arrives now equipped with the Kaioken. His swift defeat of Nappa is as sweet as candy after his onslaught, but Vegeta's betrayal is the real capper. We see here that our final opponent isn't just powerful, he's heartless. And what comes next may be the greatest fight in all of Dragon Ball. Starting off with the most iconic facedown in the franchise, Goku has to use every bit of his new training just to keep pace with Vegeta, leading up to an insane beam struggle. And after Vegeta loses, he makes a fake moon to transform into the mighty Ozaru.
And that's where this fight gets even more insane. Piccolo's showing as a kaiju in the previous saga felt novel, but here, it's a force of terror and destruction, fast enough to keep up with Goku and strong enough to crush him. It's only with the help of Krillin, Gohan, and Yajirobe that they're able to put an end to this monkey madness. This isn't just Goku versus Vegeta anymore. It's every remaining Earthling fighter versus Vegeta. Every single one of them is a necessary player here, which is pretty damn cool. Watching them all band together against this threat instead of the classic 1v1 showdown is a treat, and something we always appreciate from Dragon Ball.
luckily for our heroes, Vegeta's got his sights set solely on Gohan, so Krillin has the opportunity to take Goku's unused Spirit Bomb to try and seal the deal. And though he misses, thanks Yajirobe, Gohan's finally able to land a vital shot and rebounds the ball at the last moment, finally finishing off Vegeta. Or at least you'd think.
Surprise, motherfucker.
Because even that's not enough, and the tiny terror, bloodied and bruised, continues his rampage. Before Gohan does some totally contrived bullshit by growing back his tail, becoming an Ozaru from Vegeta's fake moon, and then crushing the Saiyan beneath him. But it's super entertaining and dramatically ironic contrived bullshit.
And though Krillin tries to rightfully end Vegeta's life, a selfish Goku begs for his friend to spare this broken mass murderer in hopes of one day being able to fight him again. After this fight, they're all barely holding on by a thread. This battle has left them all utterly wasted. It's an amazingly satisfying yet poignantly bittersweet victory. Hard fought with several casualties and the victors in tatters. They're wrecked, but they fucking won.
And the anime goes the extra mile in the recovery of the Fallen's bodies. It's an intensely somber scene complete with an emotionally ruined Bulma who can barely hold it together. But in the darkness lies a glint of hope and a new goal set before them. Next stop, Namek. It's the perfect ending to this saga, providing us with a heartbreaking but ultimately hopeful denouement and leads us right into the next story. This kind of connective tissue between arcs is exactly what we felt like was missing from the likes of Dragon Ball Super.
One of the most interesting narrative through lines in this saga is Goku's heritage. His connection to the Saiyan race doesn't affect him on an emotional level, he rejects that outright. But it's what brings this conflict to Earth in the first place, and is a huge point of contention for Vegeta, who sees himself as an elite, while Goku is lower class. This dynamic works incredibly well, because it not only further highlights Goku as the underdog, but also underscores his loyalty. He's an Earthling, goddammit! Even if the franchise would slowly but surely associate his most endearing characteristics with his Saiyan biology, yes, I'm salty about that.
The fight against the Cybermen and Nappa are so full of amazing sacrifices and losses. We've never seen death on this scale before, and it turns the despair up to 11 as the strongest among them can barely scratch Nappa, who's the second in command. But it similarly gives our heroes a moment to show just how far they've come, even if the fruits of their labor can't stack up against the Saiyan brute. It also offers us the perfect big damn hero moment for Goku and sets up the premise for the next saga.
But the real highlight here is the non-stop brawl against Vegeta. While some other fights in Dragon Ball would feel bloated and overly long, this fight actually feels perfectly paced. There's never a dull moment as things escalate via the Kaioken, the Uzaru, the Spirit Bomb, freaking Yajirobe and his sword.
It's also wonderful to watch Piccolo and Gohan develop. These two are the emotional core of most of this saga. They both provide depth and growth as they influence one another. Gohan becoming a stronger, more confident fighter, while Piccolo becomes a more empathetic, caring person. His death is maybe one of the most effective in the franchise and is done impeccably. Kudos to the anime for the scene. I mean, it's brilliant.
This saga, in a lot of ways, feels like the perfect version of this particular formula Toriyama had begun with the King Piccolo saga. No other arc does it quite this well, this consistently. It checks every box. This is Dragon Ball at its peak.
You all right, buddy?
Yeah, I'm good.
Hey, I just wanted to say thanks for bringing me on for this one, you guys. Dragon Ball's been close to my heart for a long time, and honestly, you guys helped to keep that love alive long into my adulthood. I've always enjoyed hearing your takes, whether it be here or in your abridged series, and so I guess what I'm trying to say is, it was honestly a blast to get to talk about what I love here with both of you.
Mark, my man, I love your reviews. You always have such a critical yet heartfelt perspective on everything you talk about, and you've always managed to give me something to consider and reflect on. I sincerely look up to you and your team. Thank you so much for joining us this year.
Anytime, Scott.
DBcember has always been a way for us to show Dragon Ball our love outside of DBZA. A way we could take deep dives and explore what makes it tick, and most of all, what made us love it in the first place. We hope more than anything, whether you disagree with our placement here or any other year, that you feel that love, and maybe even found some of your own reflections on the franchise.
Thank you to everyone at home for being a part of DBcember these last 8 years. Dragon Ball literally changed our lives. So getting to spend time nerding out about it with the people I care about, with an audience who cares to hear it, it's been so awesome. You've all been awesome. So please, from us here at TFS, all of us,
have a Merry Christmas,
a Happy Holidays,
And a Happy New Year.
And thank you one and all
for joining us for our last
DBcember.